Been trying to film this video for quite a while, but there has been leaf blowers and chainsaws and all sorts of crazy noises outside, but hopefully it's okay now. But if you hear things in the background, I can't be held accountable for what's going on outside of this building. Hello friends! Today's react is going to be a little bit different, partially because I'm just a teeny little bit salty. If you would like to maintain a pure, sweet image of me and not see salty lore, then I encourage you to click off this video and watch another one. Okay, so I took a break at the end of September through October from YouTube, and during that time a documentary surrounding the Irish Lolita community came out, and I received a bunch of emails and messages asking for me to react to it. The documentary is called Living Lolita. Sounds sort of familiar, right? Maybe like a YouTube series that I did 6 years ago? And it's funny how they call the documentary Living Lolita when the promotional photo for it looks like post-mortem photography. But okay, alright. I may not have been the first person to use the title Living Lolita, and I probably won't be the last. I'm sure that it's been used before and it will be used again. It's kind of a simple name that you would expect for a documentary about Lolitas, exploring their everyday lives. The way that this photo is set up and styled, it reminded me of the first time I grabbed a Victorian book as a child and opened it and showed my mom and was like, look at all these pretty dresses and outfits. And then my mom said to me, Lore, all those people are dead. Sure says a lot about me, huh? This shot is artistically pleasing, and it's really interesting to see beautiful Lolitas juxtaposed in a derelict environment, and they sort of continued that throughout this documentary. They interviewed Lolitas in spaces that were dingy and looked kind of edgy. This setup could be seen as a sort of symbol that Lolitas and their individuality and strength are beautiful in a mundane and boring world. See, even my roasts are toasts. Now this video isn't on YouTube, it's on a separate streaming site called RTE Player. And I was worried at first that I wouldn't be able to watch this in Canada, but I was! So that gives you hope that in other parts of the world you might be able to watch it too, and it is viewable in Canada. Sometimes different streaming sites are locked internationally. However, I'm going to do this video a bit differently because different people own it and I'm not quite sure how the copyright rules work with that platform. I'm only really familiar with YouTube. I'd like to invite you to pause this video and go down to my description and follow the link and open a new window and watch this for yourself. Then come back and you can see my breakdown and summary of the video. I'm going to do a sort of summary breakdown so that if you didn't watch the video, which you really should have, I will still cover what's going on in it and just some of my thoughts and reactions. So I've already watched it and I just wrote a bunch of notes and I'm going to explain them. So the documentary opens with beautiful establishing shots of the Lolitas that we will be visiting and learning about today. And this type of shot is called a hero shot for anyone who's interested. It's kind of overlaid with voiceover of them saying impactful messages and things that are important to them. Then it goes into a wide shot of what I would like to call the Lolita Last Supper. So this one is Jesus, and this one is the rebel Lolita, who's the guy who was mean to Jesus. I don't remember his name. I went to Catholic school too, but that guy, they're that guy. And then this one is sacrificing Usakumya for Brand. And this houndstooth bowler hat, because that is a bold choice. Not a bad choice, but I would like to inquire as to the rest of that chord and see how it works into it, because it could go very different ways. Then it turns into an introduction title sequence where we meet each of the Lolitas by name, and this sort of feels like if Deerstalkers made a Real Housewives introduction. And that's not a roast, that's a huge compliment. To me, Deerstalkers was so influential into the Lolita community and Lolita media, so for something to feel like it is Deerstalkers feels like it was made by the community and for the community. It doesn't feel like an outside production that's just documenting us. And it's also a huge compliment to Deerstalkers to show that their work can be held up against much larger productions. Don't get that twisted, it was a compliment. They also show Josephine walking with a suitcase, which we'll learn later that Josephine travels a great distance to be with her community. And I think that this is something that's really important to show, because a lot of the times we see Lolitas on Instagram and they're very posed and curated, and you don't realize that on the other side of that camera there might be a backpack on the floor, or a coat that isn't Lolita, or a bag of shoes that are more comfortable. And they're things that we have to make our daily lives in Lolita more comfortable, more accessible, but you don't always see them. So I think that it's really important to show that, because it shows that we are real people and we're not always so poised and perfect. It's okay to do things that aren't necessarily Lolita to make your daily Lolita experiences more comfortable and more suitable to you. So let's first meet Josephine. One of the things that I would do differently if I made this doc, or one criticism I have, is that when they're interviewing each of the people, they don't then repeat their names in the interview shots, and I would really have loved that. Maybe if I had made this, I would have put like their name, their pronouns, and maybe like a handle where you could find them. It is much more artistic to just show a beautiful shot, but it's much more helpful to the viewer who wants to maybe learn about Lolita fashion and seek out these people in this community to have that information there. Josephine's mom starts by making comments about her bloomers, and you would think that, oh, initially this parent is judging her and, you know, doesn't accept what she's wearing. But then it turns out that her mom introduced her to Lolita fashion through Kamikaze Girls, which I think is really funny. So it's almost like her mom was negging her in a fun way and is like a part of this. And it's great to see parents who are involved and understand the fashion. I think that there was also a picture of them together both wearing J fashion, which is so sweet. Josephine's mom also brings up the name Frilly Frock Brigade, and I would just like to put out there that if we all collectively come together and decide to change Lolita's name, let's change it to Frilly Frock Brigade. Animal Crossing mug. I want that mug, it's really cute. See, okay, I want to expand on that. Hat. See, it's actually a Harlequin print and not houndstooth. And this person coordinated it very nicely with Star Night Theater. I think it's a really creative and fun coordinate, and it almost looks like a Lolita casino dealer. It's so cute. And I also own those cream and gold wrist cuffs. See, at first I wasn't sure about that hat. I was like, where are you gonna go with it? And then they went somewhere really, really cute. Then in the documentary, we see the Lolitas coming together, and we get to hear from different members of the community and some of the reasons why they flock to Lolita. We also learned that the Irish community started in 2009. So happy 10 years, Irish Lolita community. Then we meet the Lolita Sarah, and Sarah is so wise. Sarah is extremely quotable and says some really amazing things, and I've written some down that I want to point out. She says, if I'm not going to fit in, then I might as well really stand out. And I just love that. It's like, if people are going to look at you anyways, then just be 100% authentic you. It's also really important, I think, to remember when Lolitas are judging other Lolitas too. It's like, we already stand out, so why not stand out even more? There's two types of people, and they are both me. Same. That's so relatable. She also makes an analogy about Kuma Kumiya-chan being a bear who is dressed as a bear. So maybe Kuma Kumiya doesn't feel comfortable just being a bear, so Kuma Kumiya like amplifies themselves. And Sarah feels the same way about Lolita. She's a girl, but she doesn't feel her ultimate girly self, and then Lolita helps her really feel that. Alright, now we meet Harmony, and I got really distracted and couldn't focus on anything Harmony was saying because they use an instrumental version of Ariana Grande's Thank You Next, and I was just listening to it, and I wasn't even listening to what she was saying, and I just rewinded it several times trying to figure out what the song was, and then I was like, oh, it's Thank You Next. So why was I worried about copyright again? Then once I figured out the song, I rewound it again, probably a 5th or 6th time, to actually hear what Harmony was saying, but I still found it really distracting because in my head, I was singing Thank You Next. I think it's cool that Harmony started off not wearing Lolita so that it can help viewers who are new to Lolita see that, oh, they're normal people wearing normal clothes, and then to see the transformation into Lolita is really cool and really important for people to understand that we're just normal people. Holly and I both audibly awed when her cat was trying to get in her room. She casually was just like, "Oh, my cat's trying to get in," and the little paw was under the door, and it was so cute. Then also in Harmony's section, they played The Smiths. And then I just had a hard time hearing what Harmony was saying because I was listening to The Smiths.
I love The Smiths.
Sorry?
I said I love The Smiths.
And why the hell was I worried about copyright again? Harmony talked about what it's like to be kind of outside of the community and live far away, and that's a really important experience to a lot of Lolitas. For myself too, before I moved, when I was in California and just starting out, I had to drive either an hour to one community or 2 hours to another community, and it was never like close by, but the internet helped me find people, and it also helped Harmony find her community. So a lot of Lolitas can often feel like they're alone or desolate, and it takes a lot of work and commitment to go out to events, but it's totally worth it if you do, and lots of people do it. They also totally set it up and shot it like Kamikaze Girls, which I really admired and felt nostalgic to me. But again, I couldn't really focus on what they were saying because they were still playing The Smiths. Then we see all the Lolitas meet up and they go to a museum, and we're greeted with that music that we are all so familiar with. It's Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette soundtrack, specifically the Hong Kong Garden song. I don't know if this affects newer Lolitas, but hearing anything from this album makes me cringe, just because when I got into Lolita, every meetup would play this album, every fashion show would use things from this album. YouTube at the time was using a lot of these songs as background music, and so hearing it just makes me cringe. And I'm really curious what your thoughts are on this, if this affects you the same way, or if you're completely new to this and confused. Let me know in the comments below. While they're all together and out in the world, they talk about what it's like to be a Lolita and have the public kind of stare at you and gawk at you. And they show B-roll of a woman walking into someone while staring at Lolitas. When people stare at you, it makes you feel insecure and start to doubt yourself, but this is the perfect depiction of, no, they're the dingus, they're the idiot, they're just, you know, taking themselves out of their lives to judge you and stare at you when they should be paying attention. This reminds me of the time at Disneyland when someone was staring at me and then walked over a half-fence barrier and fell. I mean, I feel bad for them, but also, why were you staring at me? Sarah mentions how she has just come to block these people out, which I relate to so much because over the years, I just don't notice these things anymore. I don't realize when people are staring at me, and I don't know how to advise people to do it. I think that it just comes with time. You just let it go and don't notice it anymore. It also greatly helps, obviously, to have friends or people with you who you can confide in and not feel alone, and distract yourself from people who are staring at you. Then everyone comes together and talks about how important Lolita is to them and how it just takes the courage to get together and find your niche and your community. It was a nice way to wrap it up because it encouraged people to go out and find their individual niche, whether it's Lolita or another fashion community, and just talking about how the hardest step is just going out and doing it. And they were reflecting on how they're so thankful that they did and that they brought this fashion into their lives. And we were greeted again with the Last Supper shot, but I want to mention that it became very clear to me that the way that they set this up was for filming. So if you look, they had everyone sit on one side. They did close-up shots of the Lolitas, and they did this so that they wouldn't have the back of people's heads in frame, and they would have a clearer shot, and then they just did a wide of it. So that's why that shot is set up that way. I might have dug into this doc a little too deeply, but honestly, I really, really loved it. It was a beautiful representation of the Irish community, and I would love to see more documentaries like this of other communities. I want to see all communities represented. I'm really, really grateful and thankful to the production company for taking the time and giving the Irish community this platform and the ability to be documented and just not be manipulated at all and just heard for what they're saying. I loved it. It was absolutely beautifully shot. Everything was very well thought out. I think that this will be a great tool to outsiders who want to understand more about Lolita and see Lolita for what it really is. I didn't really go into it because I feel like I've talked about what Lolita is before a lot on my channel, but they did go into the misconceptions about the book, the misconceptions about it being a fetish, and how when people say something about Lolita being a fetish, it's a huge red flag, and that that's not what they do. And each of the Lolitas did a really great job representing the fashion and representing themselves, as well as their community. I hope that I wasn't too salty. I just wanted to be honest with all of you. When I saw that it was called Living Lolita, it made me a little bit sad, and that made me a little salty because I also have something called Living Lolita. But again, probably not the only person who does. I probably wasn't the first. I don't think it's my title, so I'm over it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please go check out RTE Player and the Living Lolita video. I will link it below. And if you didn't like this video, just remember, I'm Tyler, you've been watching Scarfing Scarves, and I'll catch you next time. Just kidding, it's me, Lovely Lore. Stay lovely!